To move on to example 2, this time we're looking at using the normal distribution to solve our problems, and this is about heights of men. We're told here that heights of men are normally distributed, and we're given again the mean and standard deviation for those heights. Our problems here are to calculate the proportions given. Firstly, the proportion of men that are less than 180 centimeters tall, the proportion of men that are more than 180 centimeters tall, and then an interval proportion, so between 170 and 180. So in order to solve this problem, the important thing here is to think about the interval, the definition of that normal distribution. We need the mean and the standard deviation. So we can begin by writing down this distribution, and we can write it down saying x belongs to a distribution, and we use the twiddles tilde there, normal distribution with a mean of 175 and a standard deviation of 7. So that defines for us our distribution. It's a good idea for part A here to draw a little picture of the normal distribution and decide what we're trying to find. So our normal distribution, symmetrical distribution with a mean of 175, and we're looking for the proportion of men that are less than 180. So the probability that x is less than 180. So of course here 180 is on the right hand side of the mean, and we're looking for the total probability up to that point, so shaded there in red. To do this probability, we can very easily use Excel, and Excel here will be using the norm dist distribution. So over to Excel, and we use function normdist. So for this function, we need to put in the x value. The x value here is 180. We want the probability of being up to and including 180. We have a mean of 175. So 175 goes into the mean, standard deviation of 7, and we use 1 for cumulative there. So this gives us a probability of 0.76 and then a whole lot more accuracy. So 0.76, and we can come back to our example here and write that formula down again. We have normdist, Normdist, with the parameters 180, 175, 7 for the standard deviation, and 1 for cumulative, which gives us the area up to that point. And that probability to 2 decimal places was 0.76. Now, looking at that probability, remember that the whole probability underneath our diagram graph there is 1. It looks like a reasonable value for the red shaded area. Part B. We're here looking for the proportion of men that are more than 180. So of course what we're considering here is the right-hand side unshaded probability from the diagram you can see, which we'll draw again, 175, the mean in the middle, 180 on the right-hand side there, and our interested area here is to the right of 180. Now, again, without going back into Excel here, we will be using normdist, but this time we're subtracting from 1. So this time, using the complement rule, we say the probability that x is bigger than 180 is 1 minus the probability that x is less than 180. And that will be 1 minus, using the answer from part A, 1 minus 0.76, which comes out at 0.24. Again, you can use Excel to get that value, but we can use part A in this example. And then to do part C. Now, part C is an area between 2 values. So part C, we're looking in part C for the proportion of men who are between 170 and 180 centimeters tall. So we want the probability that x lies between 170 and 180. So again, drawing our diagram with the mean in the middle, 175. then we have 170 on the left-hand side and 180 on the right-hand side of the mean. We can shade in that area between those two values, and that's what we've been asked to calculate here. So using the normal distribution here, and again norm distribution, we write the probability that x is less than 180 minus the probability that x is less than 170. And doing that subtraction calculation will give us the area in the middle. So we already have from part A the probability that x is less than 180. That was using norm dist. We got norm dist, and we would use there 180, 175 for the mean, 7 for the standard deviation, and 1 for cumulative, and subtract from that the value that we get for 170, norm dist again, with 170 this time, 175, 7 for the standard deviation, and 1 for cumulative. Now this time the probabilities that we get are, you can check these from Excel, 0.76 for 180 minus 0.24 for 170, and that comes out to be 0.52. So that's our area shaded red between those two values. Check that you can get those from Excel. And that's the end of example 2.